As the sun dipped low over the dusty horizon, casting a golden glow across the rugged landscape, Cowboy Jack pulled up his trusty old truck outside the dilapidated remains of the witch's house. "Well, Paws," he chuckled, ruffling the fur of his faithful German shepherd, "looks like we struck gold today, or at least a heap of old memories." The creaking timber and faded paint told tales of years gone by, whispering secrets that danced on the evening breeze. Jack's eyes sparkled with mischief as he stepped out, boots crunching on the gravel, his hat tilted just right. Paws bounded ahead, nose to the ground, tail wagging like a flag in the wind. Suddenly the dog stopped short, sniffing a weathered wall like it was the last piece of a puzzle. Jack squinted, a grin playing on his lips. "What's got your nose all twitchy, partner? Ghosts or just the scent of old beans?" But before he could take another step, a voice, raspy and playful, floated from the shadows. "Forbidden to sleep in the witch's house," it echoed, sending a chill that felt more like a tickle down Jack's spine. He shared a wide-eyed glance with Paws, heart racing, yet laughter bubbling up inside. "Guess we're in for one heck of a night, eh, boy?" With a twinkle in his eye, as the sun dipped low behind the jagged hills, casting long shadows over the dusty trail, the cowboy squinted at the silhouette of an old wooden house nestled among gnarled oaks. The wind carried an eerie whistle, as if the trees were gossiping about the place. Paws, his loyal German shepherd, sniffed the air with that signature furrowed brow, tail wagging with a mix of curiosity and caution. "Looks like we stumbled on a place that ain't seen a visitor in decades," he mused, giving Paws a playful nudge. The house, with its peeling paint and broken windows, seemed to beckon them closer. A faded sign creaking on the porch, reading, "Witches Welcome." With each step, the old floor creaked beneath their boots, a symphony of whispers urging them to turn back. But the cowboy's adventurous spirit wouldn't allow that, and neither would Paws, who nudged him forward with a gentle shove of his snout. Inside, the air was thick like molasses, and the cowboy could almost taste the history soaked into the wooden beams. Dust motes floated in the late afternoon light, dancing like lost spirits among the clutter of old furniture and rusty trinkets. A stone fireplace stood at the far end, filled with soot but lacking warmth, as if it had long forgotten how to burn. "What do you reckon, partner?" the cowboy asked, scratching the back of his hat. Paws sniffed around, eyes wide, catching an odd scent that made his ears perk up. "You reckon it's just a ghost or two looking for a friend?" the cowboy chuckled, knowing full well that any phantom they might meet would be the friendliest kind, the kind who'd offer a cup of coffee rather than a scare. A loud crash from the attic sent Paws into a barking fit. The cowboy, grabbing his trusty lantern, its flickering light casting long shadows across the walls. The duo made their way through the eerie corridor, where photos of stern-faced folks lined the walls, watching like a jury, ready to pass judgment. The cowboy leaned in closer, squinting at a particularly old photograph of a woman with wild hair and a knowing smile. "Now there's a face with a story." Paws, meanwhile, had found a loose floorboard and was busy digging at it, tail wagging like a flag in a storm. "What are you digging for, boy? A treasure? Maybe some ghostly chewing bones?" The cowboy laughed, but before he could reach for Paws, a gust of wind slammed the door at the end of the hall wide open. Both froze, exchanging wide-eyed looks. The house seemed to breathe, alive with secrets. With a determined, albeit slightly nervous nod from the cowboy, they ventured towards the ominous doorway, ready for whatever awaited them on the other side. Crossing the threshold, they found themselves in a room cluttered with peculiar objects, jars filled with mysterious liquids, odd herbs hanging from the ceiling, and a cauldron that looked like it had seen better days. Paws sniffed around excitedly, as if he'd found a long-lost family member, while the cowboy chuckled at the absurdity of it all. "Well, we've walked straight into a witch's den," he said, half in jest. Just then, the cauldron began to bubble, steam rising in whimsical shapes, and for a brief second, the cowboy wondered if they'd unwittingly set off some old spell. "Better not get too close, buddy," he warned Paws, who seemed utterly entranced. Last thing I need is a magic dog. The bubbling grew louder, and amidst the chaos, a strange but pleasant aroma filled the air, giving them a sense of warmth in the otherwise chilly room. As they were about to turn back, a soft laugh echoed through the space, sending shivers down the cowboy's spine. A figure began to materialize before them, ethereal, but surprisingly friendly. A woman clad in vintage prairie attire, her smile as warm as the summer sun. "I see you found my little home," she said with a gentle chuckle, her voice like music on a summer breeze. The cowboy took a step back, clutching his lantern tightly, while Paws waggled his tail in greeting, as if he recognized an old friend. "Worry not. I'm just the guardian of forgotten tales," she reassured him, glancing at Paws. "And you both are in for quite the adventure." With a twinkle in her eye, she began to share whimsical stories of the past, weaving magic into their hearts. And just like that, the cowboy realized that they hadn't merely stumbled upon a haunted house. Instead, they had found a bridge between worlds, where laughter and mystery intertwined like the roots of the ancient oaks outside. With the sun dipping low over the dusty plains, the cowboy tipped his weathered hat and squinted against the amber glow that bathed the landscape. Standing proudly beside him was Paws, his loyal German shepherd, whose sharp ears perked up at the rustling leaves. The two of them had roamed these parts for years, but today a twinge of mystery hung in the air like summer thunder. The old McAllister house loomed ahead, its sagging porch creaking like an old man's back. The tales told by townsfolk spoke of ghostly whispers and shadows that danced at odd hours. Unfazed, the cowboy leaned close to Paws, his partner in crime, and whispered, "Looks like we're in for a real hoot, boy. Let's see what sort of mischief we can rustle up." As they approached the house, the cowboy kept a keen eye out, light-hearted banter flying between him and Paws. "You think the spirits mind if we borrow their abode for a spell?" he chuckled, nudging Paws with his elbow. In response, Paws tilted his head, tail wagging as if to say, "Let's get to it." They stepped onto the porch, the wood groaning beneath their weight, every creak echoing like a ghostly greeting. Paws sniffed at the doorframe, tail wagging wildly, while the cowboy scouted for any unusual signs. "If there's a ghost in here, Paws, you better start barking for it gives us a scare." With a comical flourish, he swung the door open, revealing dusty rooms filled with forgotten memories, cobwebs stretching like old tales across the corners. Inside, the dim light cast eerie shadows that flickered and danced, setting the stage for their spirited escapade. The cowboy pulled out an old lantern, igniting it with a flick of his wrist. "Well, partner, if we're gonna find any spooks, this here lantern better do the trick." Paws trotted ahead, nose to the ground, investigating every crevice as if he were uncovering buried treasure. Each room they explored was filled with relics of the past. A cracked mirror reflecting their jovial expressions, dusty portraits with eyes that seemed to follow them, and a piano, half collapsed, that let out a moan when the cowboy plucked a key. Laughter echoed off the walls as he attempted a tune, making Paws tilt his head, as if puzzled by the cowboy's off-key attempts at music. "Guess my singing's enough to wake the dead," he joked, and even the shadows seemed to giggle in response. Suddenly, a gust of wind slammed a door shut in the distance, and Paws sprang into action, barking with a mixture of courage and confusion. The cowboy chuckled nervously. "Well, looks like we ain't alone after all." The playful atmosphere shifted slightly as curiosity peaked. They moved cautiously toward the sound, peering through the door that had slammed shut. The cowboy, with his heart racing, whispered to Paws, "You ready to face whatever's in there?" Paws let out a low growl, eyes bright with determination, ready to protect his friend from whatever may lurk in the shadows. They opened the door together, revealing a room filled with dusty trinkets and a wooden rocking chair gently rocking back and forth. "Guess we found our ghost," the cowboy quipped, his humor a shield against the unknown. As the sun dipped lower, bathing the house in a warm twilight, the bond between the cowboy and Paws deepened amidst the thrilling unknown. Their adventures were far from ordinary, filled with laughter, light-hearted banter, and the joy of discovery. In that haunted house, they weren't just two wanderers. They were a team tackling mysteries with a blend of bravery and a touch of rural comedy. As Paws nosed around the old rocking chair, wagging his tail and playfully nudging the cowboy's leg, the camaraderie glowed like the lantern's light, bright and unwavering. With every twist, turn, and echoing laugh, they knew that together they could face anything, even the ghosts of the past, because their friendship was stronger than any spooky tale could ever be. The sun dipped low on the horizon, casting long shadows across the dusty landscape as the cowboy ambled down the weathered path toward the old McGraw place. A tattered envelope clutched in his weathered hands bore an elegant invitation that seemed wholly out of place in this rugged terrain. He squinted at the ornate letters, unsure how such fancy script had found its way to his humble homestead. Beside him, his loyal German shepherd named Duke wagged his tail, intrigued by the scents swirling in the evening air. The cowboy hoisted himself onto his trusty steed, thinking this could either be the adventure of a lifetime or a wild goose chase, and he had a hunch that mischievous spirits might be lingering in those old walls. Upon arriving at the McGraw house, the sight was both breathtaking and spine-chilling. The moonlight illuminated the dilapidated structure, its peeling paint and broken shutters telling tales of past glory and whispered secrets. The front door creaked open, as if beckoning him inside, while Duke stood alert, ears perked and ready for whatever came next. With a chuckle, the cowboy nudged his canine companion. "Guess we're not in Kansas anymore, fella. Looks like we're about to get a taste of the ghostly gourmet." Duke sniffed the ground, picking up traces of the past, likely left by the spirits who roamed the halls. The cowboy felt a shiver that had nothing to do with the cool night air. It was the thrill of mystery wrapping around him like a lasso. As they stepped into the dimly lit foyer, a portrait of a stern-looking lady hung askew on the wall, her eyes seeming to follow them. The cowboy joked, "I reckon she's not too keen on visitors. Might want to start with a polite howdy before we shake hands." Duke let out a low growl, warning his master as shadows flitted across the room. A sudden noise echoed from upstairs, like the sound of slow, deliberate footsteps. "Well, shoot, Duke. Guess we're not alone after all." With a grin, he picked up a dusty old lantern, its flickering flame casting ghostly shapes against the rough-hewn walls. The balance of humor and apprehension hung in the air, creating a sense of camaraderie between the cowboy and Duke as they prepared to confront whatever lay ahead. Suddenly, a gust of wind burst through the cracked window, snuffing out the lantern's light. The cowboy chuckled nervously as he fumbled to relight it. "Now this feels like the start of a bad joke. You think we're gonna find a ghost who just wants to swap sweet tea recipes?" Duke barked sharply, ears pricked, as if sensing the uninvited presence. The cowboy felt a rush of warmth from his companion's bravery. "All right, buddy, let's show these ghosts what we're made of." With a hasty strike of a match, the lantern flared back to life, revealing a staircase that twisted up into darkness like a serpent ready to swallow them whole. The duo exchanged a glance filled with both mischief and resolve, and up they went, ears tuned to the ghostly whispers that danced through the air. As they ascended the creaky stairs, the cowboy couldn't shake the feeling that they were being welcomed into a game far older than the prairie itself. "Duke, if we end up being the main course in some old-time ghost supper, just remember I'm the one who brought the snacks." Duke's tail wagged in response, ever the eager partner in crime. They approached a door at the end of the hallway, the wood splintered and worn. With a deep breath, he pushed it open, revealing a room cluttered with antiques, each piece telling a story of joy and sorrow. An uneasy silence enveloped them, interrupted by the soft laughter of children echoing like an eerie lullaby. The cowboy's heart raced, and with Duke by his side, he knew they were in for an adventure filled with both spookiness and the kind of heartwarming moments that could only happen when a cowboy and his dog face the unknown together. The sun began its descent, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple as the cowboy and Paws made their way to the dilapidated Smithson house. Wooden beams creaked underfoot like a tune only the ghosts could hear, while the scent of wild sage hung heavy in the cool evening air. Paws, ever the vigilant companion, sniffed curiously around the entrance, his fur ruffling in the evening breeze. A sense of foreboding wrapped around them like an old quilt, yet the cowboy's spirit was as buoyant as a spring lamb. "Don't you worry, Paws," he chuckled, scratching under the dog's chin. "Ain't no ghost gonna scare a couple of fine fellas like us." The shadows danced along the walls, whispering tales of lost love and long-forgotten feuds, beckoning them deeper into the heart of the mystery. Inside, dust motes swirled in the fading light, settling on a table laden with old trinkets. The cowboy picked up a tarnished locket and held it up for Paws to inspect. "What do you reckon this story's about, boy? Could be a lovesick cowpoke or maybe an old coot who forgot his pickled beets." Paws tilted his head, as if contemplating the very weight of the locket's history. With a flick of its hinge, the locket sprang open, revealing a faded photograph. The cowboy squinted, then let out a hearty laugh. "Well, looky here, a face that only a mother could love. Let's find out who this fella was and why he's still hanging round." The spark of adventure danced in their eyes as they delved further into the many corners of the house, their footsteps echoing in rhythm with the ancient tales that enveloped them. The air thickened as they reached the kitchen, where the floorboards creaked ominously beneath their weight. It was there they found a rusty kettle perched atop a long-forgotten stove. The cowboy turned to Paws, eyes sparkling with mischief. "Think it's still got a brew in it? Might just be the best ghost tea in town." Paws sniffed the kettle, sneezing as a cloud of old dust billowed forth. The cowboy chuckled. "Well, that's one way to scare a ghost away. Just sneeze 'em right out of the house." As they rummaged through the cupboards, the shadows seemed to lean in closer, as if eager to join the laughter. Perhaps, just perhaps, the specters of the past were as curious about them as they were about the haunting secrets lurking in the walls. Suddenly, a loud thump echoed from the upstairs. The cowboy shot a glance at Paws, who stood frozen, ears perked high. "Did you hear that, partner?" he whispered, trying to stifle the grin that threatened to break loose. "That's our cue to head up and see who's throwing a hoedown without us." Climbing the creaky staircase, they shared a silent understanding that whatever awaited them, they would face it together. At the top, the door to the attic was ajar, the hinges squeaking a ghostly song. The cowboy nudged Paws ahead. "Go on, big fella. Let 'em know we mean business." As Paws stepped forward, the door swung open wider, revealing a room dimly lit by moonlight, where a dusty rocking chair swayed ever so slightly. The sight made the cowboy chuckle. "Looks like we found the host of the hoedown after all." In that moment, laughter and courage mingled in the air, dispelling the chill that had settled into the corners of the room. The rocking chair ceased its motion, and the cowboy stepped closer, heart pounding with anticipation. "Well, I reckon we've got a mystery to solve, Paws. Let's see if we can get this lonely spirit to share a tale or two." Paws barked softly, tail wagging in eager agreement. As they surveyed the attic, old letters and dusty heirlooms came into view, each item whispering secrets of love, loss, and laughter that had once filled the house. In this strange company of ghosts and shadows, the cowboy found not fear, but kinship, a bond that tied him, Paws, and the spirits of the past together in an unexpected tapestry of friendship and adventure. The night was far from over, and they had only just begun to uncover the town's hauntingly rich folklore. The sun dipped low over the plains, casting golden hues across the sprawling landscape as the cowboy and his loyal German shepherd, Scout, rolled into town. The townsfolk had been abuzz with stories of a house at the edge of the prairie, reputed to be haunted by long-gone ranchers. With the smell of old leather and dust clinging to him, the cowboy leaned against his trusty horse, Buck, and squinted toward the eerie silhouette that rose against the twilight. The house stood proud yet forlorn, its wooden slats creaking softly in the wind, like a ghost whispering secrets of yore. Scout's ears perked up, his instincts sharpening at the unfamiliar aura. He let out a low growl, a sound that mixed apprehension with excitement, as if he could sense what lay ahead. As they approached, the cowboy chuckled to himself, shaking his head at the stories he'd heard. "Ain't nothing but an old wives' tale," he muttered, though he felt a flutter of unease in the pit of his stomach. The porch sagged like an old-timer's backside, and the windows were clouded with years of neglect. But curiosity, fueled by the promise of adventure, pushed them forward. Scout trotted beside him, his tail wagging with enthusiasm, as if ready to unearth the treasures of the past. The cowboy gave him a playful nudge. "You ready, boy? Let's see what Mrs. Jenkins has been yapping about." As they stepped onto the creaking porch, it seemed to groan under their weight, as if it too had something to say about their arrival. The door swung open with a reluctant creak, revealing a dimly lit foyer that smelled of mildew and long-forgotten memories. Dust motes danced in the slivers of sunlight that pierced through the curtains, creating an ethereal glow that transformed the cobwebbed corners into a gallery of shadows. The cowboy took a deep breath, the air thick with mystery, while Scout sniffed about, his nose twitching as he explored their surroundings. "You smell that, boy? Smells like trouble. Or maybe just old cheese," he joked, earning a quizzical tilt of Scout's head. The room felt alive, with every creak of the floorboards echoing stories, as if the house itself were welcoming them or warning them to leave. As they ventured further inside, a sudden gust of wind rattled the windows, sending a chill down the cowboy's spine. "Well, ain't that a fine how do you do?" he quipped, turning to Scout, who merely wagged his tail, brimming with excitement. The cowboy couldn't help but chuckle at his four-legged friend's enthusiasm. "Looks like we got ourselves a cozy little haunt partner. Let's see if we can stir up some spirits." The walls were adorned with faded photographs of the previous owners, each face a blend of happiness and sorrow frozen in time. The cowboy felt a twinge of empathy. He imagined their laughter filling the halls, now replaced by echoes of solitude. In the heart of the house they discovered a grand parlor, the remnants of a once thriving life scattered about. An old rocking chair swayed gently, though no one sat in it, and dusty books lined the shelves, their spines cracked but resilient. The cowboy leaned against the fireplace mantel, a crooked smile on his face. "Looks like we found ourselves a real-life ghost story, Scout," he said, motioning for the dog to join him. Scout plopped down at his feet, eyes bright with trust and anticipation. The cowboy felt a surge of warmth. In this creaky house filled with whispers of the past, the bond between them felt unbreakable. Together, they were ready to uncover whatever delightful mysteries lay ahead, knowing that as long as they had each other, no ghost could scare them away. The wind howled through the cracked windows of the old Johnson homestead as the cowboy tightened his grip on the saddle horn. Dust swirled in lazy circles, flickering like ghostly fireflies in the fading light of the setting sun. Beside him, his trusty German shepherd Duke stood with ears perked up and nose twitching, scanning the dimly lit interior for any hint of a spook. The place had a reputation, a long-standing rule passed down from generations: no sleeping inside after sundown. The cowboy chuckled, recalling the old-timers' tales of spectral figures and rattling chains, but he also felt a shiver of apprehension. "Come on, Duke, let's scope this place out," he said, stepping gingerly past an ancient rocking chair that creaked like a ghostly laugh. As they explored the creaky floorboards and peeling wallpaper, the cowboy felt a series of strange drafts that sent chills down his spine. Duke trotted ahead, his nose to the ground, sniffing as if he could decipher the stories hidden in the layers of dust. The cowboy's imagination ran wild, picturing dusty boots and spurs from eras long past. They poked their heads into a parlor where the light from the last rays of dusk illuminated a delicate antique mirror. Duke whimpered softly, gazing at the reflection as if he could sense something lurking behind them. A chuckle erupted from the cowboy. "I reckon you see something I don't, boy. Let's not go getting spooked now." With a playful nudge to Duke's flank, he turned to delve deeper into the mystery of the house. Clambering to the staircase, the cowboy couldn't help but notice how the wood groaned underfoot, almost as if warning them to turn back. But curiosity held them captive. He had to admit it felt as if the house itself were alive, breathing through the cracks and crevices. Suddenly, a glimmer caught his eye at the top of the stairs. A dusty oil lamp flickered to life, casting eerie shadows that danced on the walls. "Well, I'll be. Ain't that a sight?" he exclaimed, his voice mixing excitement and disbelief. Duke remained alert, ears back as if he sensed their unwelcome audience. The cowboy, fueled by a blend of intrigue and a sprinkle of trepidation, stepped closer, the air thick with an electric energy that made the hair on the back of his neck stand up. They soon found themselves in a forgotten bedroom where the wallpaper was peeling like an old snake shedding its skin. The cowboy leaned against the frame of a rickety bed, its mattress sagging like an old cowpoke after a long day's ride. "What do you think, Duke? You ready to bunk down for the night?" he asked, a hint of a grin tugging at his lips. Duke sniffed the air, and for a moment, the cowboy swore he heard a faint whisper echoing through the stillness. "Nah, we ain't breaking that rule, buddy. We'll find ourselves a cozy spot outside." Just as he finished speaking, a loud thump reverberated from the attic, sending Duke into a low growl. Eyes wide, the cowboy looked at Duke, both of them frozen in a moment of shared disbelief and curiosity. "Guess we ain't alone after all, huh?" With a quick glance at the gathering shadows, they retreated outside, the cool night air embracing them like an old friend. The stars twinkled overhead, a million eyes observing the cowboy and his fearless companion. They settled down on a patch of grass under the old oak tree, the fragrance of wildflowers mingling with the crispness of the night. As they gazed up at the sky, the cowboy felt a mix of relief and camaraderie. "See, Duke, ain't nothing like the great outdoors. We'll spin a yarn about our little adventure. Just you wait." Duke nestled snug against his side, the warmth of their bond radiating through the crisp air. For the cowboy, there was no doubt, adventuring with his four-legged partner was the only way to face the mysteries of that haunted house, and the stars above seemed to twinkle in agreement. Evening sun draped the dilapidated farmhouse in a golden glow as the cowboy and his trusty German shepherd ambled up the creaky porch steps. The place had seen better days, but an odd charm still lingered in the air, swirling like the dust motes dancing through the frayed curtains. Paws, with his nose twitching like a hound on a scent, had been uneasy since they crossed the threshold. His ears perked up at the faintest creak, like an old floorboard, whispering secrets, drawing the duo deeper into the timeless wilderness of both the house and its forgotten stories. The cowboy tipped his hat back, chuckling softly. "You smell something, boy? Or are you just being a scaredy cat?" Paws shot him a look that said, "This ain't no time for jokes, partner." With a gentle nudge, the cowboy urged Paws ahead, trusting his instincts, as the loyal pooch led the way down a narrow corridor lined with faded photographs. Framed faces seemed to watch them, with eyes full of untold tales and mischief. As they moved further into the house, Paws let out a low growl, the kind that sent shivers up the cowboy's spine. They stumbled upon a dusty old parlor that smelled of must and memories. The cowboy couldn't shake the feeling they were being watched. "If this ain't the spookiest place this side of the Mississippi," he exclaimed, trying to lighten the mood. Paws stood resolute, his nose quivering as he sniffed at an old rocking chair, obviously more interested in the past than the cowboy could ever comprehend. Suddenly, the rocking chair began to sway, creaking eerily in a ghostly rhythm. The cowboy's eyes widened, and he reached for his trusty lasso, half expecting a wayward spirit to materialize right there in front of him. But Paws, ever bold, bounded toward the chair, barking with an enthusiasm that could only come from one deeply devoted to his cowboy. "Easy there, Paws," the cowboy laughed, his heart racing. "It's just an old chair, you know. Ain't no ghost gonna take you home." With a tilt of his head, Paws seemed to respond, a mix of challenge and reassurance in those big, soulful eyes, as if to say, "I ain't afraid of no rattling bones." The cowboy couldn't help but admire his companion's zest for adventure, even if it meant chasing down unseen spooks. As they explored further, Paws led the cowboy to a trapdoor in the kitchen, the wooden boards warped and aged, as if they'd been guarding secrets for decades. The dog's tail wagged like a flag on a windy day as he scratched the surface with fervor. "Well, what do you know?" the cowboy mused, peering down the darkened stairs. "We might be sitting on a treasure trove or some old farmer's leftover pickles." The prospect made his heart race with anticipation, but Paws was all business, darting back and forth as if to say, "Let's see what's down there." With a deep breath, the cowboy took the plunge, his heart thumping louder than the rickety stairs beneath their feet, buttressed by Paws's unwavering energy. The basement was dimly lit, with shadows that danced like old-timey movie reels. Paws' nose was in overdrive, sniffing out every hidden nook and cranny, while the cowboy's curiosity bloomed like wildflowers in spring. A chuckle escaped his lips when Paws barked excitedly at a dusty, forgotten trunk. "What's in there, boy? A stash of gold? Or maybe Uncle Jed's leftover moonshine?" Paws wagged his tail, urging him on, until the cowboy finally managed to pry the trunk open. Inside lay townsfolk memorabilia, scattered love letters from long-lost romances, and a lonely harmonica that let out a wistful note when picked up. "Looks like we hit the jackpot, Paws." The cowboy grinned, his heart swelling with affection for his four-legged friend. Together, they'd uncovered not just forgotten trinkets, but a mosaic of the lives that came before them, each piece a thread in the tapestry of their adventure, bonded deeper than ever in the spirit of exploration. The sun hung low on the horizon, casting long shadows over the forgotten homestead, a relic of the Wild West where whispers of yesteryears echoed through the creaky wooden walls. As the cowboy stepped onto the porch, the boards groaned beneath his boots like a tired old mule. Beside him, his German shepherd, aptly named Paws, sniffed the air, ears perked high, alert for mischief as much as for spooks. A breeze rustled through the prairie grass, carrying with it a scent of dust and something faintly sweet, maybe a ghostly pie left behind by a long-gone cook. With a playful nudge from Paws, the cowboy chuckled, "Well, partner, reckon we're gonna need our best detective hats today." With a push, the door swung open, revealing a dimly lit living room, the sunlight filtering in through cracked windows like a shy visitor. Dust motes danced in the beams, and the wallpaper was peeling, revealing a pattern of faded roses that once bloomed with splendor. Paws trotted in first, tail wagging like an excited flag, ready to uncover the secrets of the house. The cowboy followed, his hat tilted just so, casting a shadow over his amused grin. "I'll bet you a biscuit there's something real special hiding in here," he said, nudging aside a weathered rocking chair that squeaked in protest. The sound echoed through the empty halls, almost like a ghostly chuckle. Paws let out a soft growl, as if to say, "I reckon that chair has stories too, cowboy." Venturing deeper, they found themselves in the kitchen, where pots and pans hung like silent sentinels. A gust of wind sent a single pan clattering to the floor, and Paws leaped back, fur bristling as if he'd been shot at. The cowboy snorted, half laughing, half comforting. "Don't you worry, boy. Ain't nothing but the ghosts of bad cooks long gone." As he bent to pick up the fallen pan, a sudden squeak erupted from the attic above, sharp and uncanny, cutting through the stillness. Paws turned his head, ears flopping comically as he zeroed in on the noise. "Now that's more than a tired old farmhouse creaking," the cowboy mused, squinting upward. "Looks like we've found our first clue, eh?" They clambered up the rickety staircase, each step groaning as if the house itself protested their intrusion. Paws led the way, his nose twitching, tail a constant wagging metronome of excitement. Reaching the top, the cowboy hesitated, taking a moment to admire the view through dusty glass panes, the sprawling fields stretching out beneath an indigo sky. "Don't you fret now, Paws," he whispered. "These walls might be filled with history, but we're the ones with the guns." They moved into what once might have been a grand bedroom, the air thick with the scent of cedar and decay. A shadow shifted in the corner, and Paws barked, bounding forward, ready to protect his partner from the unseen specter. As they cornered the shadow, it revealed itself to be an old trunk, its hinges rusted and forgotten. The cowboy knelt down, wiping dust from the lid with the sleeve of his shirt. "What do you think, Paws? Treasure or trouble?" The trunk creaked open with a moan, revealing a collection of old photographs, yellowed with age. The cowboy chuckled, picking up a picture of a stern-looking man with a large mustache. "This fella looks like he'd wrestle a bear for his breakfast," he said, adjusting his hat. Paws sniffed the trunk, tail wagging like a windmill in a summer breeze. Together, they had stumbled into a history that, while cloaked in mystery, brought joy and laughter to their adventure, solidifying the bond between the cowboy and his loyal companion as they unraveled the past one unexpected squeak at a time. The moon hung low over the abandoned ranch house, draping the landscape in a silvery glow that danced across the creaking wooden porch. The cowboy tiptoed across the threshold, his trusty German shepherd, Dusty, snuffling at his heels. They'd come in search of tales, long buried in the dusty corners of this ghostly abode, and already the atmosphere thrummed with a peculiar energy. Dusty's ears perked up, catching sounds the cowboy couldn't quite make out, as if whispers from the walls beckoned them to uncover secrets that lay shrouded in dust. With each cautious step, the floorboards groaned like an old mule waking from a long nap, setting the stage for the adventure ahead. In the dim light filtering through grimy windows, the cowboy's eye caught a glint of something on the floor. A faded, leather-bound diary, its spine cracked like an aging tree. Dusty approached it, sniffing curiously, as if he sensed its importance. The cowboy leaned down, brushing aside the cobwebs, and picked it up. The cover was worn, and the pages fluttered like the wings of a trapped bird. He turned it gently, a mix of excitement and trepidation coursing through him. "Well, ain't you a sight for sore eyes?" he chuckled, brushing off dust with a comic flourish. Dusty tilted his head as if to say, "What's so funny?" The cowboy grinned, well aware of their shared fascination with the tales of yore. As he opened the diary, the words jumped out like fireflies at dusk. Scribbled notes detailed the life of a rancher from a century past, a man who spoke of moonlit nights and spectral visitors. "Now, this fella was a bit superstitious," the cowboy mused aloud, tapping a finger on a sentence that mentioned strange occurrences. A ghostly horse that roamed the fields after midnight. Dusty's ears perked even higher, as if the name of that spectral steed rang a bell. They both felt it, the rustle of history swirling around them, urging them on. The cowboy couldn't help but chuckle at the idea of a phantom horse gallivanting about. He could just imagine Dusty barking at it, trying to round it up as if it were a stray calf. Eager to solve the puzzle, the cowboy flipped through the pages, and a pressed wildflower fell to the floor like a forgotten memory. Dusty sniffed it, a puzzled look crossing his face as he nudged it with his nose. "What's that, boy? A clue?" The cowboy laughed, delighted at their blossoming detective work. Each smudge and stain on the page hinted at a life once vibrant, filled with laughter and perhaps a little ghostly mischief. The pair felt an exhilarating thrill. The thought of unraveling a mystery tied them together even tighter. The cowboy could almost hear the rancher's laughter mingling with the night air, as if inviting them to join in the fun. With renewed determination, the cowboy and Dusty prepared to delve deeper into the house, the diary clutched in one hand and Dusty's paw lightly stepping beside him. They meandered down a narrow hallway that echoed their footsteps like the farmhouse ghosts trailing behind. "Let's see what else this old house has to spill," the cowboy remarked, a twinkle of adventure in his eyes. Dusty wagged his tail, fully sensing the camaraderie that this journey fostered. What other secrets lay hidden in the shadows, and how many more tales of the past awaited them in this eerie yet captivating haunt? Together, they forged ahead, ready to piece together the fragments of a life long gone, with laughter and a heart full of courage lighting their way. The sun dipped low behind the jagged peaks, casting long shadows that danced like ghosts across the old wooden porch of the dilapidated ranch house. Every creak of the floorboards beneath the cowboy's boots echoed as he stepped inside, his trusty German shepherd Duke at his side, nose sniff in the air as if it held secrets swirling around like dust in a summer breeze. The whispers of the past tickled the back of his neck, but he shook it off. "Ain't no spook gonna scare me, Duke," he muttered, scratching the dog behind the ears. Duke barked softly in response, always one to encourage his master from the other side of reason. They ventured deeper, the light of the setting sun breaking through broken windows, illuminating cobwebs and shadows that clung to the corners like old memories trying to plead their case. The cowboy's skepticism was as sturdy as the saddle on his horse, woven from years of hard-earned experiences on the range. He chuckled to himself when he heard a soft rustle, sure it was just the wind playing tricks like an ornery horse. "Probably just a raccoon looking for his supper," he said, nudging Duke to follow him further into the room. The old banjo, gathering dust atop a rickety shelf, seemed to hum out a tune, drawing the cowboy's gaze. A part of him wanted to believe it was the spirit of some long-lost musician, but he waved off the thought faster than a rattler's strike. Might as well be the wind whistling. "Ain't no ghost got the time to be playing music when there's hay to be stacked," he joked, but deep down he couldn't help but feel a prickle of curiosity. Suddenly, a gust of wind swept through the room, rattling the loose shutters like a wild mustang. Duke's ears perked up, his instinctual warning to the cowboy that something wasn't quite right. Now what in tarnation was that? The cowboy's bravado faltered for just a moment, and he stood tall, trying to mask any unease that crawled up his spine. Duke sniffed the air again, his nose wrinkling as he picked up a scent that sent him darting toward the staircase. "You lead the way, partner, but if it's a ghost, I reckon you can take it on yourself," the cowboy joked, steeling himself for whatever awaited them upstairs. The duo ascended the creaky steps, a mix of rural comedy and tension weaving through their hearts like the yarn in a seasoned quilt. At the top of the stairs, the air thickened with something heavier than the dust settled upon the floorboards. A door creaked, almost theatrically, as it swung open on its own, revealing a room where time had clearly stood still. The cowboy peered inside, lips twitching in a grin, despite the goosebumps prickling his skin. "Well, I'll be, if that ain't a sight for sore eyes. Looks like someone forgot to clean up after a long visit." He gestured for Duke to come closer, who was now sniffing the doorway as if deciphering an unspoken code. The cowboy chuckled. "You think it's just an old sock or something more sinister?" The wag of Duke's tail suggested he agreed, but they both knew that whatever lay inside could turn the mundane into the extraordinary. As they stepped into the dim light, an old rocking chair began to sway gently, creaking in time with the cowboy's heartbeat. He couldn't help but let out a soft laugh, shaking his head at the absurdity of it all. "Looks like someone setting up for a good old chat." He took a seat more for show than anything, as Duke settled close, ever watchful. "You know, Duke, if this place is haunted, I reckon it's just a soul waiting for a good story." The dog leaned into him, and the cowboy patted his side. "Let's give 'em a story worth listening to, huh?" With that, their adventure took a new turn, blending skepticism with a heartwarming bond, ready to uncover whatever this old house had in store for them, one chuckle at a time. The sun hung low, casting long shadows across the porch of an old Victorian house that had seen better days. The cowboy, dressed in his battered hat and worn boots, stepped gingerly onto the creaky floorboards, which groaned underfoot like a tired old mule. Beside him, his German shepherd Duke sniffed the air, ears perked and tail wagging. The duo had journeyed into the heart of the deserted town of Whispering Pines, drawn by whispers of ghostly occurrences that had stirred the locals into fits of both curiosity and fear. With a sense of adventure coursing through his veins, the cowboy pushed open the heavy door, which swung inward with a reluctant creak, as if it were inviting them to discover the secrets hidden within its walls. Dust motes danced in the fading light, and the cowboy muttered to Duke, "Well, partner, I reckon we're about to crack this case wide open." As they stepped into the parlor, the cowboy felt a chill race up his spine despite the warm afternoon sun. The faded wallpaper was peeling, revealing layers of forgotten stories hidden beneath. Glancing around, he noticed a portrait of a grim-looking woman who seemed to glare right through him, her eyes following his every move. "Ain't you a sight for sore eyes?" he chuckled, trying to lighten the mood for Duke, who had begun to growl softly. The cowboy approached the mantel where an old clock ticked, its rhythm a haunting accompaniment to the silence. Suddenly Duke barked, his sharp voice shattering the stillness like a twig snapped in two, prompting the cowboy to jump. "What is it, boy? You see something, or just trying to give me a heart attack?" With Duke on high alert, the two continued their exploration. The cowboy, trying hard to keep his bravado intact while his heart raced with a mixture of fear and excitement. They stumbled into what appeared to be a dusty library, filled with cobweb-covered books that looked like they hadn't seen the light of day in decades. A thick layer of dust settled over the furniture, yet oddly, a single chair in the corner was disturbingly pristine. "Now that's peculiar," the cowboy mused, scratching his head while Duke's nose twitched with curiosity. As he reached for a book labeled Local Legends, a sudden gust of wind slammed the door shut behind them, making him jump a foot in the air. "Great Scott, that's just a tad dramatic, don't you think?" He couldn't help but laugh nervously, glancing back at Duke, who seemed less than amused. In that moment, the cowboy realized that they were not just uncovering the mysteries of the house, they were also deepening their bond through shared moments of fear and laughter, a partnership stronger than the dust motes drifting around them. The cowboy's heart swelled as Duke, with determination in his eyes, started to paw at the floorboards beneath the dust, revealing a loose panel that creaked as the cowboy nudged it further. "Looks like we might have found ourselves something interesting," he exclaimed, feeling the thrill of discovery coursing through him. As they pried open the panel, a stale odor wafted up, laced with hints of old leather and neglect. With the sunlight beaming down on them, they uncovered a weathered journal, its pages yellowed and brittle. "Well, would you look at this, Duke? Could be a treasure map, or maybe even love letters." The cowboy's voice filled the room with enthusiasm, which Duke mirrored with a happy bark. It felt like they were on the brink of unearthing a piece of history, a connection to the past that could help explain the eerie tales that had long haunted the townsfolk. As the shadows lengthened and dusk began to creep in, the cowboy and Duke huddled around the journal, uncovering stories of lost loves and whispered secrets that echoed through time. As they pieced together the life of the woman from the portrait, they couldn't help but chuckle at the more humorous passages, imagining her wading through the quirks of life with the same tenacity they had. "Turns out she was quite the spitfire." The cowboy laughed, slapping his knee as Duke let out a low growl of approval. They realized that some ghosts weren't there to haunt, but to remind the living of love, laughter, and stories worth telling. With the night drawing close and the house feeling a touch less ominous, the cowboy knew this wasn't just an adventure. It was a journey into understanding both the past and the bond he shared with Duke, one that would last long after they left the haunted walls behind. The sun dipped low on the horizon, casting elongated shadows that danced like restless spirits across the worn wooden porch of Old Man Jenkins's house. The cowboy leaned against the splintered railing, tipping his battered Stetson back as he peered into the dimly lit interior. Beside him, his loyal German shepherd, Dusty, rested his chin on the ground, ears perked up like a radar dish, catching every whisper of the evening breeze. "What's tickling your fancy, boy?" the cowboy asked, his voice a gravelly drawl. Dusty's tail thumped against the floor, sending a cloud of dust spiraling into the air. The air was thick with mystery, and a sense of adventure crackled like the static in a summer storm. With a chuckle, the cowboy stepped inside, the old door creaking with a protest, like an old-timer reminiscing of better days. Dusty followed closely, nostrils flaring as he took in the unfamiliar scents of dusty books and forgotten memories that hung in the air like moths around a flame. Inside, the house was an antique jumble, with faded portraits lining the walls, their eyes following the cowboy with a judgmental gaze. A chandelier swayed gently, creaking like an old guitar string, as if it had stories of its own to tell. Dusty's tail wagged, his eyes darting everywhere, and the cowboy couldn't help but laugh at his furry friend's enthusiasm. "You smell something, partner," he teased, nudging Dusty playfully. Suddenly, a low whisper drifted through the air, barely audible yet unmistakable. The cowboy froze, heart racing. "Did you hear that?" he whispered, half convinced it was just the wind. Dusty's ears shot up, and he gave a low growl, tail stiffening. "All right, let's go see what's shaking. I reckon this old place has more than a few secrets." With a deep breath, he grabbed a flashlight, its beam cutting through the dimness like a knife through warm butter, and ventured further into the spine-chilling depths of the house. As they wandered through the rooms, Dusty trotted ahead, sniffing every nook and cranny, his nose a whisker away from a dusty old trunk. The cowboy chuckled when he saw Dusty poke his head inside, his ears flopping comically as he pulled back with a look that could only say, "Nothing but a pile of rags." But the cowboy's laughter was short-lived when another whisper floated through the air, this one sounding more like a chuckle than a sigh. "Well, I'll be," he exclaimed, glancing around as if expecting to see a ghostly figure emerge from behind a faded floral curtain. Dusty barked softly, his head tilted in confusion. "You think there's a ghost wanting to join the party?" The cowboy mused, half serious. "I reckon we better get to the bottom of this before we frighten off any customers." With a wink, he moved deeper into the house, Dusty at his side, both of them ready to face whatever peculiarities awaited them. In the kitchen, cobwebs hung like drapes, and an old rusted pot sat on the stove, looking as if it hadn't been used since the days of the Wild West. The cowboy raised an eyebrow. "What do you think they cooked in here? Mystery stew," he joked, his voice echoing slightly in the silence. Dusty trotted around the room, sniffing areas where the pot had collected dust. Suddenly, the floor creaked louder than a cat on a hot tin roof, and both the cowboy and Dusty jumped, hearts pounding in tandem. "Whoa there, partner! I reckon this house is more jumpy than a jackrabbit on a sugar fix," Dusty barked, as if in agreement, and the cowboy couldn't help but laugh again. "Looks like we ain't alone after all, huh?" Summoning his courage, he continued to poke around, pushing open a door that led to a pantry, only to find a shelf stacked high with jars labeled in faded, curling script. "Pickled what?" he muttered, more intrigued than disgusted as Dusty sniffed eagerly at a jar, almost as if daring his owner to take a taste. Then, just as the tension seemed to rise like bread dough, the whispers grew more distinct, swirling around them like the sweet scent of fresh hay. The cowboy scratched his chin, his brow furrowed in thought. "You know, Dusty, I think these voices want us to find something." With newfound determination, he picked up a dusty jar with a scroll of paper attached to it, the script barely legible. As he read the note aloud, a series of mishaps ensued. Dusty jumped at a sudden noise, knocking over a stack of old pots with a clatter that echoed through the room like a stampede. The cowboy burst into laughter, wiping away tears of mirth. "Well, ain't we just the best ghost hunters in the West?" he chuckled, Dusty looking up at him with an expression that seemed to say, "I'm just here for snacks, partner." In that moment, the bond between them strengthened, a reminder that even amidst shadows and whispers, the heart of adventure beats strongest when shared. The sun dipped low on the horizon, casting a golden hue over the dilapidated homestead. Dust motes danced in the beams that spilled through broken windows, giving the old house an almost ethereal glow. The cowboy, hat tipped just so, surveyed the splintered porch and creaking steps, while his loyal German shepherd, Paws, sniffed eagerly at the ground. "Well, partner, ain't this a sight?" he drawled, stepping carefully inside, his boots crunching on the forgotten memories of the floorboards. Paws was already on the case, a true detective in his own right, nose to the floor, tail wagging like a flag on a brisk day. With the scent of musty old wood and something faintly metallic swirling around them, the cowboy couldn't shake the feeling they were in for a mystery thicker than Grandma's gravy. As they explored, Paws darted from room to room, each whiff unveiling secrets buried deeper than the old cowboy's poker face. The kitchen, with its warped cabinets and rusted utensils, held a faint trace of something sweet, like the remnants of a long-ago pie left to cool. The cowboy chuckled as Paws pawed at an empty jar, tilting his head in that goofy way that always made the cowboy grin. "You think there's a ghost in here baking cookies, boy?" he teased, shaking his head. But the moment was fleeting. Paws had already caught another scent, racing down the narrow hallway, tail a blur as he passed cobwebs hanging like curtains from forgotten dreams. The cowboy followed, his heart light, knowing that whatever lay ahead, they'd face it together with a laugh and a wag. Suddenly, Paws skidded to a halt, nose pressed against a crooked door. The cowboy felt a shiver run down his spine. "What did you find, fella?" he asked, crouching beside his four-legged companion. The door creaked ominously as the cowboy nudged it open, revealing a small room packed with dusty boxes, each one more mysterious than a cactus bloom in the moonlight. Paws sniffed around excitedly, his ears perked like a prairie dog spotting trouble. The cowboy squinted at the shadows, playing tricks in the corners, half expecting to see a ghostly figure pop out and offer a cup of coffee. With a laugh, he reassured himself, "Nah, it's just the wind and those pesky ghost stories from right down the creek." As Paws poured through boxes filled with yellowed photographs and forgotten trinkets, the cowboy felt the air grow heavy with anticipation. "What do you reckon is hidden in there?" he mused, rummaging around beside his furry friend. Paws found a dusty old hat, its brim long since forgotten, and nudged it over to the cowboy's feet. With a smile, the cowboy declared, "Well, look at that. A fine hat that's seen more sunrises than most townsfolk." Just then, a low moan echoed through the house, sending both of them jumping. "Guess old Hank ain't too happy we're digging around in his old stuff," the cowboy quipped, letting out a hearty laugh that bounced off the walls. Paws barked, tail wagging as if to say, "Let's go find him." Together they forged ahead, the bond between them stronger than any ghost story whispered in the late hours. Each creak of the floorboards felt like a laughter shared between childhood friends, and every scent Paws uncovered was a new riddle to solve. They were a mismatched duo, the cowboy with his weathered boots and Paws with his gleaming coat, pulling secrets from the shadows like a magician pulling rabbits from a hat. With every step, the old house revealed not just its history, but also the heart of its stories, all while the cowboy and Paws gathered tales of their own. And as the sun dipped below the hills, illuminating the ghostly edges of the past, they pressed deeper into the unknown, ready to uncover what lay beneath layers of dust and time. The old Whitmore house loomed ahead, its weathered facade standing like a sentinel at the edge of the dusty town. Cowboy tipped his hat to the sun, squinting as he approached the creaking porch steps. Paws, his loyal German shepherd, bounded ahead, sniffing at the mysterious air. Flickering shadows danced in the windows, hinting at secrets long buried beneath layers of dust. Cowboy chuckled, his boots scraping against the wooden planks. "Well, Paws, reckon we might find ourselves some treasure or a ghostly friend or two." A shiver ran down his spine, but he dismissed it with a wave of his hand. The townsfolk whispered about strange happenings within, portraits that changed when no one was looking. A mix of curiosity and good-humored trepidation drew him closer, each step a mix of bravado and a tickle of fear. Inside, the air was heavy with the scent of mothballs and memories. A grand staircase spiraled upward, its banister gnarled like an ancient tree. Cowboy glanced around, spotting a series of portraits lining the walls. Faces from another time, eyes following him like hawks tracking a rabbit. "Well, would you look at that?" he murmured, gesturing to a particularly stern-looking lady in a frilly gown. Paws tilted his head, as if trying to decipher the unspoken stories trapped in the paint. Cowboy snickered. "She looks like she's just waiting for someone to step out of line." With a playful poke to Paws' side, he dared, "You be good, or the lady might just come down and give you a piece of her mind." The room echoed with laughter, the two companions relishing the light-hearted banter amid the chilling atmosphere. Suddenly, a draft swept through, sending a shiver down Cowboy's spine and making the portrait sway slightly, as if nodding in agreement with some unseen force. Paws, ever the vigilant protector, barked playfully, unsure if the flickering shadows were friend or foe. "Easy there, partner," Cowboy exclaimed, laughing. "Ain't no need to scare the ghosts." The flickers of candlelight cast amusing shapes across the walls, illuminating the peculiar expressions on the painted faces. Cowboy leaned closer to inspect one of the portraits, a man with a wild beard and a mischievous grin. "Now, there's a face I'd like to share a drink with." Betty had some wild tales to tell. His heart raced, not out of fear but excitement for the stories waiting to reveal themselves, much like the playful antics of his beloved paws. As Cowboy examined another portrait, he noticed a peculiar detail. The eyes of an elderly man seemed to glimmer with life every now and then, winking playfully at him. "Well, ain't you a sprightly fella?" Cowboy exclaimed, chuckling to himself. Paws barked in agreement, tail wagging as if acknowledging a shared joke. "Maybe he's just tickled to see us," Cowboy mused, scratching paws behind the ears. The energy in the room shifted, and Cowboy felt a connection to this long-lost spirit, a bond forged through shared laughter and the mysteries that filled the air. The atmosphere lightened, and the previous chill morphed into an inviting warmth, as if the house itself welcomed them both, a cowboy and his faithful companion. Just then, a soft whisper wafted through the room, like an echo of laughter from days gone by. Cowboy turned to Paws, whose ears perked up, the German shepherd alert, yet relaxed. "You hearing that too, boy?" he asked with raised eyebrows. "Sounds like the ghosts might be throwing their own shindig." Cowboy laughed heartily, and Paws barked back, as if joining in the spectral celebration. The two adventurers stood in the heart of the haunted house, surrounded by portraits that held more than just paint and canvas. They held tales of joy, sorrow, and mystery. Cowboy felt an undeniable connection to each quirky character, all while realizing that he and Paws were weaving their own story within these walls, one filled with laughter, adventure, and the bond that could light even the darkest corners of the past. The sun tucked itself behind the jagged hills, casting long shadows over the dilapidated homestead. Beat-up wooden boards creaked underfoot as the cowboy stepped into the old structure, the scent of dust mingling with the faint smell of something sweetly rotting. His faithful German shepherd, Dusty, sniffed the air, ears perked and tail wagging as he bounded inside, his paws pattering against the splintered floor. The cowboy chuckled softly, a warm grin spreading across his rugged face. "You think it's just another critter, don't you, boy?" Dusty responded with a quizzical tilt of his head, and for a moment the two shared a silent agreement to unravel whatever mystery lingered within these walls. Just as the cowboy pulled a dusty lantern from a hook, a voice as soft as a summer breeze floated through the air. "Help me," it whispered, sending a shiver down his spine. It was almost imperceptible, like the breeze playing tricks. Dusty's ears perked up like radar dishes, and he glanced back at his master, eyes wide with curiosity. The cowboy squinted into the dark corners of the room, the lantern light flickering like a nervous flicker of a heartbeat. "Now that ain't something you hear every day," he muttered, half to himself and half for Dusty's benefit. The words hung in the air, heavy with untold stories. What secret lay behind that voice, and did they dare follow it? As they ventured deeper into the shadowy bowels of the house, the voice called again, this time more urgent. "Help me, please!" The cowboy felt a tug at his heartstrings. "Well, I reckon we can't leave someone stranded now, can we?" Dusty gave a low growl, the protective instinct of a loyal companion flaring up. The cowboy crouched, meeting Dusty's gaze. "All right, partner, let's see what trouble we're getting into." With a firm nod, the pair pressed onward, the lantern illuminating their path through the cobweb-laden hallways where faded photographs hung crookedly, eyes appearing to follow their every move. Each creak and groan of the old timbers felt like a chorus, the house alive with secrets. The voice, now a tangible thread, beckoned them up a rickety staircase that moaned with each step. The cowboy paused, glancing back at Dusty. "You wait here in case things get hairy. I'll holler if I need you." But Dusty had other ideas. With a determined leap, he bounded up the stairs, leaving the cowboy chuckling and shaking his head. "All right, I see it's a partnership after all." Together, they approached a door at the end of the hall, its paint peeling and hinges rusted. The voice called again, laced with a desperation that tugged at the cowboy's heart. "Help me!" It echoed against the walls, and he felt a mix of fear and excitement bubbling in his chest. Pushing the door open, the cowboy stepped into a room cloaked in shadows, the air thick with the weight of untold stories. A figure hovered in the corner, barely visible, dressed in the faded garb of a long-forgotten era. Dusty let out a low bark, the sound reverberating against the walls and surprising the cowboy. "Easy, boy," he whispered, a grin breaking through his apprehension as he patted Dusty's head. The figure turned, eyes filled with echoes of years gone by, and for a brief moment the cowboy felt a strange kinship, a connection woven through the fabric of time. "We're here to help," he called out, exuding a mix of bravado and warmth. In that moment, the bond between a cowboy and his dog illuminated the dark corners of a haunted house, proving that even in the face of mystery, companionship could turn fear into adventure. Moonlight spilled through the cracked windows of the old Johnson homestead, casting long shadows that danced with the wind. The cowboy, tall and rugged with a weathered hat perched on his head, tiptoed into the dusty parlor, his trusty German shepherd Duke by his side. The floorboards creaked like a rusty gate, and even the air seemed to hold its breath, as if the house itself remembered the secrets it harbored. Duke sniffed the air, ears perked and eyes alert, his powerful frame a mix of grace and strength. The cowboy chuckled softly. "You smell something, boy? Hope it ain't last week's stew." A low growl emanated from Duke, urging the cowboy to stay sharp. Their bond was as deep as the canyon, each trusting the other implicitly. They navigated through a maze of antique furniture, with trinkets that hadn't seen the light of day in decades, while the faint sound of piano keys tinkling in the distance sent a shiver down the cowboy's spine. Suddenly the piano notes grew louder, unmistakably deliberate, as if someone or something were inviting them to join the haunting melody. The cowboy grinned. "Duke, I reckon we've got ourselves some company." With an exaggerated swagger, he sauntered toward the music, half expecting to find a spectral pianist eager for an audience. Duke, ever the diligent protector, stayed close, his stance firm, tail rising like a flag. As they approached the room, the air turned chilly, a heavy sensation that weighed down on their shoulders. The cowboy stopped short and nudged Duke forward gently. "Go on, buddy. Show us what you're made of." Duke hesitated, then bravely padded to the threshold. An old player piano sat in the corner, its keys moving without a hand to guide them. The cowboy let out a chuckle. "Well, looks like the spirit's got a flair for the dramatic." In that moment, the cowboy couldn't help but feel a twinge of camaraderie with the unseen musician. This house, though shrouded in mystery, had a heart that thudded in tune with their own. As if sensing his thoughts, Duke gave a playful bark, breaking the spell of suspense. "Ain't that just like a ghost to show off?" The cowboy laughed, the sound echoing off the walls. He reached forward, giving Duke a quick scratch behind the ears, a gesture of reassurance. "We're not scared of no ghost, are we?" The dog tilted his head, as if weighing the question. The music continued, and the cowboy's imagination spun tales of long-gone dance halls and barn dances where old-timers spun their sweethearts under the stars. He could picture the laughter, the stories shared, the life that had once filled these dusty rooms. As the music played on, the cowboy noticed a flicker of movement at the edge of his vision. He turned to see a figure, barely more than a whisper, drifting through the wall like smoke. His heartbeat quickened, but he remained steady, emboldened by the presence of Duke. "Well, howdy there," he called out with a teasing lilt. "Want to show us some steps?" Duke barked again, chasing after the figure as if it were a wayward squirrel. The cowboy couldn't help but laugh at the sight, the ghostly figure appearing to lead Duke deeper into the house. "Looks like you've got a new friend, partner," he hollered, chasing after them, stepping over a rickety chair as the laughter bubbled up inside him. The chase led them into a narrow hall lined with portraits of long-ago residents, their eyes seeming to follow their every move. The cowboy felt an odd sense of belonging, as if the ghosts were welcoming them into their world, sharing stories of lives once lived. "This sure beats sitting around a campfire, don't you think?" He grinned as Duke playfully barked at the spectre, who seemed to glide in circles as if coaxing them to dance. The cowboy twirled around, mimicking the ghostly movements, laughter spilling from his lips. Duke joined in, leaping in and out of shadow, his form a joyful blur. Even the haunted past couldn't dampen their spirits as the cowboy felt the warmth of friendship ignite, laughter mixing with the chill of the air, and the night blossomed into an adventure neither would soon forget. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows over the dilapidated old ranch house, the cowboy adjusted his wide-brimmed hat and gave a reassuring pat to his loyal German shepherd Duke. The creaking wood meant secrets were locked within these walls, and as they approached the front porch, a gust of wind sent a shiver up the cowboy's spine. Duke, ever the brave companion, sniffed the air with his ears perked, ready to tackle whatever ghostly mischief lay ahead. "This place has seen better days, partner," the cowboy chuckled, though a tinge of unease crept into his voice. The old wooden door swung open with a groan, revealing a dimly lit interior that smelled of dust and forgotten tales. Once inside, the cowboy flicked on his trusty lantern, its glow illuminating faded photographs and dusty furniture. Duke darted around, ears flopping nose to the ground, like a kid in a candy store. A shiver danced down the cowboy's spine as an old rocking chair began to sway ever so gently, a ghostly presence seemingly inviting them in. "Well, ain't that just adorable?" he quipped, trying to ignore the chill. "Guess even ghosts get bored sitting around all day." He leaned closer, peering into the photo frames, but one picture caught his eye. A lady in a white gown, with a far-off stare that seemed to follow him. Duke barked lightly as if to say, "This is a job for us." As they ventured deeper into the house, the cowboy pushed open a creaky door that led to the kitchen, revealing a silver kettle boiling over an empty stove. "Now that's a sight you don't see every day," he said, stifling a laugh. Duke sniffed the kettle curiously, his eyes wide as if he'd just found a hidden treasure. A sudden clatter from the pantry made the cowboy jump, but Duke stood firm, nostrils flaring. "Easy there, Duke. We ain't here to tussle with Casper," he joked, though the tension was palpable. Gremlins or poltergeists could be the root of this ruckus, but the cowboy was determined to discover if their antics were harmless or a bit too mischievous. With each creak of the floorboards, the cowboy and Duke crept further into the heart of the house. Inside a dusty parlor, a curtain flapped like a giddy dance partner, and the cowboy's curiosity got the better of him. "Maybe old Ghosty just wants to join our hoedown," he laughed, imagining a spectral square dance. Duke, catching the cowboy's jovial spirit, wagged his tail, as though he understood the importance of humor even when faced with the eerie unknown. But just as they settled into a light-hearted banter, a framed mirror on the wall suddenly shattered, and both the cowboy and Duke jumped back in surprise, eyes wide as saucers. "Now that's what I call a real break in the evening," he chuckled, his heart pounding, but his spirit unbroken. The final surprise awaited them in the attic, where a wooden trunk lay half open, glowing in the lantern's light. "Sweet mother of pearl! What do we got here?" the cowboy exclaimed, lifting the lid to reveal dusty hats, faded letters, and an old toy horse that looked like it had galloped straight from a forgotten era. Duke's tail wagged furiously, and the cowboy couldn't help but laugh at the absurdity of it all. "Looks like we hit the jackpot," he said, tossing Duke a dusty bandana. "Let's see what secrets our ghostly friend had stashed away." With hearts light and spirits lifted, the duo embraced the playful side of the haunting, reminding each other that even amidst the eeriest of mysteries, laughter was the best remedy for fear. The old clapboard house sat at the end of Dusty Trail Road, like a weary old cowpoke, weathered and creaky, with a porch that groaned under the weight of years. The wind whistled through the cracks in the wall, a mournful tune that echoed the tales of yore. cowboy leaned against the splintered wood, tipping his hat back as his loyal German shepherd, Duke, sniffed the air with the intensity of a raccoon on a midnight raid. They'd heard tell of a treasure buried deep within the confines of this haunted abode, supposedly left behind by a long-lost prospector who met his untimely end in the very same place. Duke's ears perked up as a low howl cut through the stillness, making the cowboy's spine tingle. "Well, partner," he said, chuckling nervously, "looks like we ain't alone in this here ghost town." With a creaky step, they ventured inside, the floorboards protesting like an old mule. Dust swirled in golden shafts of sunlight, dancing like spirits trapped in a waltz. The cowboy scanned the dim room littered with cobwebs, his heart thumping with anticipation. "Now, Duke," he whispered, "we gotta find that treasure map before the sun sets and those ghosts come back home." Duke wagged his tail enthusiastically, as if he understood every word. They moved cautiously, peering behind faded curtains where shadows loomed, while Duke's nose led the way like a true bloodhound. Suddenly, an old trunk caught the cowboy's eye, half buried beneath a pile of yellowed newspapers, like a secret waiting to be uncovered. The trunk creaked open, unleashing a cloud of dust that made the cowboy cough like a catfish choking on a hook. Inside, amidst a jumble of tarnished trinkets and faded photographs, lay an old piece of parchment, its edges frayed and yellow with age. Duke barked excitedly, as if he had unearthed a bone from a time forgotten. The cowboy smoothed out the map, squinting at the squiggly lines and strange symbols that danced before his eyes. "This here looks like a guide, Duke, a guide to a treasure that's as lost as a tumbleweed in a windstorm." The pup bounced in a whirlwind of excitement, his tail wagging like a flag in a parade. Together, they had a mission now, and the house seemed to vibrate with a newfound energy, like the tension before a storm. As they followed the map's winding path, the house revealed its quirky character. Doors creaked ominously, and odd sounds echoed like laughter in the night. Each room held a piece of the past, with faded wallpaper peeling like an old snake shedding its skin. In the library, a shelf came tumbling down, sending part of the collection crashing to the floor. Duke jumped back, barking at the chaos. Cowboy couldn't help but laugh as he picked up a dusty book, its title promising tales of adventure. "Guess the ghosts are trying to keep us entertained, eh?" he teased, ruffling Duke's ears affectionately. They pressed on, fueled by their bond and the promise of treasure, feeling more like partners in crime than mere adventurers searching for gold. The map led them to the basement, a dark maw that seemed to swallow the very light of day. The cowboy lit a lantern, its flickering glow casting shadows that danced like spooked cattle. Duke, ever the brave companion, took point, his intuition guiding them deeper into the unknown. As they turned a corner, a hidden alcove revealed itself, adorned with intricate carvings and dusty relics that whispered old secrets. The cowboy's heart raced. Could this be it? But just then, a door slammed shut behind them, echoing like thunder in a still prairie. "Well, ain't that a fine how do you do?" he exclaimed, half laughing, half yelling. Duke whined, tail tucked but ready to face whatever ghost was lurking. Together, they stood against the darkness, united in their quest, knowing that no matter what lay ahead, they were in this together, partners for life, chasing the flicker of fortune and laughter amidst the shadows. The sun hung low in the sky, casting long shadows across the creaky floorboards of the old western house. Dust motes danced in the golden light as the cowboy adjusted his hat, squinting at the narrow door that led to the attic, a place rumored to be filled with secrets and specters. Beside him, Paws, his faithful German shepherd, sniffed the air, his ears perked up like radar dishes, poised for any sign of trouble or treasure. With a gentle nudge, the cowboy urged Paws to lead the way. The door swung open with a dramatic creak, revealing a steep staircase that vanished into darkness. "Well, partner, only one way to find out if the ghosts are friendly," he chuckled, tipping his hat back as they ventured upward. As they ascended, the boards groaned underfoot, sending a shiver down the cowboy's spine. He couldn't help but imagine the stories this attic could tell, of long-forgotten family heirlooms and perhaps a few mischievous spirits. The air grew thick with the smell of old wood and something vaguely sweet, like pie left on the windowsill too long. Paws suddenly halted, tail wagging ferociously at a pile of what looked like dusty old trunks. "What do you think, boy? A treasure trove or just the remnants of a raccoon convention?" he joked, nudging one of the trunks with his boot. Paws barked excitedly, as if to say that anything hidden was worth investigating, and the cowboy couldn't help but laugh at his companion's enthusiasm. Once the trunk creaked open, a plume of dust erupted into the air, making the cowboy cough and choke like a chicken with a mouthful of feathers. Inside lay a colorful assortment of old clothes, yellowed photographs, and something glittery that caught Paws's eye. The cowboy reached in, pulling out an antique locket. "Well, ain't this a pretty little thing?" he said, polishing it with his sleeve. Paws sniffed it curiously, tilting his head as if to ask, "What's the story behind that one, boss?" Just then, a sudden chill swept through the attic, sending goosebumps racing across the cowboy's arms. He glanced at Paws, whose ears were perked up like a pair of antennas, sensing the shift in the air. "You feel that too, huh? Could be the ghost of a lovesick cowboy, or just a draft." He chuckled nervously. The atmosphere grew heavier, as if the very walls were watching them unravel the attic's mysteries. The cowboy and Paws cautiously moved deeper into the clutter, where old furniture loomed like shadows in the dim light. A strange rustling sounded from the corner, and the cowboy froze, his heart racing. "What in tarnation is that?" he whispered, gripping the locket tightly. Paws growled softly, a low rumble vibrating through his chest as he crept to the edge of the shadows. With a deep breath, the cowboy bravely stepped forward, only to find a family of mice darting between the boxes. "Well, shoot! Just a bunch of whiskered bandits stealing our thunder," he laughed, easing the tension. Paws relaxed, his tail wagging once more as they both chuckled at the scare. As they prepared to leave the attic, the cowboy couldn't shake the feeling that they hadn't quite plumbed the depths of its secrets. Paws, still intrigued, gave one last sniff at the trunk, as if sensing something just beyond their grasp. "You know what, buddy? Maybe we're just scratching the surface of a wild tale," the cowboy mused, feeling a sense of excitement bubble inside him. As they descended the staircase, a sudden draft whispered through the attic, as if the house itself was beckoning them to return. He glanced down at Paws, who seemed to agree wholeheartedly, his bright eyes sparkling with adventure. "Looks like we've got some unfinished business, eh? Just us two against the ghostly unknown." With a hearty laugh, the cowboy tipped his hat to the attic door, unsure of what awaited them next, but ready to face it with his loyal companion by his side. Underneath the booming twilight sky, the cowboy and his trusty German shepherd, Duke, trotted along the dusty road, the sound of clinking spurs echoing like a tune from a forgotten fiddle. They had stumbled upon a dilapidated homestead, its wooden boards sagging like an old man's back. The ghostly whispers of the past danced in the air as the cowboy nudged open the creaky door, which squealed louder than a pig in a poke. Duke's nose twitched, picking up a scent that wasn't quite right. With a knowing glance, the cowboy patted Duke on the head. "Looks like we ain't alone, boy." Inside, the shadows loomed like old friends turned sour. Dust motes floated lazily in the beams of moonlight, filtering through cracked windows, creating an almost ethereal glow. The cowboy chuckled. "Duke, I reckon this place has seen more drama than a cat at a dog show." They navigated through cobweb-filled rooms, where the floorboards creaked ominously underfoot, each step a reminder that some secrets are better left undiscovered. Suddenly, a playful gust of wind blew through the hall, whistling a tune that made Duke perk up, his ears twitching like a grasshopper in a summer field. As they ventured deeper, the cowboy swore he saw a flicker of movement out of the corner of his eye. "Did you see that, Duke?" he asked, his voice a mix of excitement and disbelief. Duke, ever the alert companion, barked in agreement, tail wagging with curiosity. They found themselves in a parlor where a dusty old piano stood, seemingly untouched for decades. With a whiff of mischief, the cowboy sat down and played a few off-key notes, evoking a chuckle from Duke. Suddenly, the air thickened, and an unseen hand pressed down on the keys, playing a haunting melody that echoed through the empty halls, a ghostly serenade for two wayward adventurers. Giggling nervously, the cowboy leaned closer to Duke. "I reckon we've struck a chord with the spirits here." The German shepherd tilted his head, as if to say, "Ain't that the truth?" Just then, the curtains fluttered wildly despite the lack of wind, revealing a shimmering outline of a woman in an old-fashioned dress. Instead of fear, the cowboy felt a warmth in his heart. "Ma'am, are you looking for some company?" The ghostly figure smiled, and for a moment it was as if time stood still. A bridge formed between the living and the spirit world, where laughter echoed louder than fear. With newfound camaraderie, the cowboy engaged the ghost in a light-hearted conversation, swapping stories of the past, while Duke lay at his feet, listening intently. The ghost shared tales of her life in the old homestead, the laughter, the heartaches, and the traditions that once filled its rooms. "You keep this place lively, just like a spring rain," the cowboy said, tipping his hat. As the night wore on, the cowboy didn't just see a ghost. He found a friend, someone who understood the love of home, and Duke wagged his tail, a silent promise that they'd keep the spirit alive, one adventure at a time. The sun hung low over the dusty plains, casting long shadows that danced across the weathered porch of the old Johnson homestead. The cowboy adjusted his hat, the brim flopping slightly as he squinted at the creaky structure. Paws, his loyal German shepherd, barked softly, his ears perked up, sensing something amiss. Their previous encounters with the supernatural had left them with a curiosity and a hearty dose of caution. As they ventured inside, the door's hinges groaned in protest, a sound familiar enough to make every hair on Paws' back stand tall. Inside, the air was thick with the scent of aged wood and the whisper of secrets long buried. Daring to step further into the dim-lit room, the cowboy felt a shiver run down his spine, not from fear, but from an electric thrill. It was just another day of unraveling the curious tales that clung to the walls of abandoned places. The cowboy kicked aside an old boot, revealing a dusty photograph half hidden beneath a layer of neglect. It depicted a family, their faces frozen in time, but something felt off. He glanced at Paws, who tilted his head as if trying to piece together the puzzle. With a chuckle, the cowboy said, "Well, buddy, looks like we're about to play detective." Paws wagged his tail, his excitement infectious. They began their search in earnest, the cowboy trailing his fingers along the peeling wallpaper, uncovering whispers left by those long gone. Suddenly Paws paused, nose twitching, then darted toward the corner where a tattered curtain fluttered in an unseen breeze. The cowboy followed, his heart racing. The duo had a knack for finding the oddest of things. What lay behind that curtain, they both wondered. Was it a ghostly presence, or merely a drafty old window? With a sly grin, the cowboy yanked the curtain aside, revealing a dusty old mirror that hung precariously from the wall. "Well, would you look at that?" he said, his reflection and Paws' curious face staring back at him. But something was different. In the mirror's glass, a shadow flickered, only a heartbeat before vanishing. Paws barked, his stance alert. The cowboy felt a chill creep up his spine, not from fear, but the thrill of the unknown. "I reckon we're onto something," he murmured, nudging Paws with his knee. With a shared understanding, they approached the mirror, the cowboy squinting to get a better look. "You seein' what I'm seein', boy?" Paws let out a low growl, as if urging his partner to tread carefully. They were no strangers to the unseen, and whatever mystery lay ahead would either reveal a story or chase them out faster than a jackrabbit. As they examined the mirror closer, the cowboy noticed faint etchings around its frame. His fingers traced the designs, a swirling pattern that seemed to pulse with energy. "Looks like fancy work, don't it?" he remarked, glancing at Paws, whose nose was practically glued to the wood. There was something familiar about the markings, but the cowboy couldn't quite place where he had seen them before. With resolve, he pulled a small knife from his belt and scraped away the dust that had masked the engravings. Suddenly the room felt electric, and Paws leapt back, ears pinned back, a low growl rumbling from his chest. "Easy there, partner," the cowboy said, sensing the shift in atmosphere. This was not just a mirror, it was a gateway, and whatever lay ahead was bound by the bond between them and the courage that flared in their chests. Just then, a gust of wind sent papers flying off a nearby table, scattering like startled quail. The cowboy laughed. "Guess the house wants to join the party." Paws barked in agreement, his tail wagging as he chased the fluttering papers around the room. With each piece that landed at their feet, a new clue emerged. The cowboy bent over to pick one up, revealing a letter, faded but legible. It spoke of lost treasures hidden within the walls of the old homestead, the writer's longing echoing through time. "A treasure hunt, eh? Well, I reckon we've hit the mother lode." He could feel Paul's excitement radiating next to him, and with a shared glance, they knew their adventure was only beginning. In this haunted house, amidst the echoes of history, the cowboy and Paws were determined to uncover not just the mystery, but the legacy that awaited them. The sun dipped low in the sky, casting long shadows across the porch of the old Harrison homestead. The paint was chipped, and the winds whispered secrets of days gone by as the cowboy stepped cautiously onto the creaking floorboards, his trusty German shepherd Rufus trailing right behind him. Every step echoed in the silence of the house, and a shiver ran down the cowboy's spine, though he chuckled to himself, "Ain't nothing here but ghosts of dust and memories." Rufus sniffed around, his ears perked like a radar, catching every sigh of the wind that slipped through the broken shutters. They were on a treasure hunt for the famed family locket, rumored to have been lost in the house. But it felt like they were just as likely to stumble into a ghost story. Suddenly, a flicker of movement caught the cowboy's eye. In the dim light, he squinted, spotting an old rocking chair swaying back and forth, though the air was still as a summer's day. "Well, would you look at that?" he said, scratching his chin. "Rufus, you reckon Miss Harrison's got a bone to pick with us?" Rufus let out a low growl, his fur bristling. The cowboy chuckled, but he felt a tinge of unease. They approached the chair, and just as they did, a gust blasted through the room, causing dust motes to dance like fireflies. A moment later, the cowboy's heart raced as a familiar glint caught his eye. A silver locket nestled in the shadows of the old mantelpiece, beckoning to them. As they moved closer, the floor creaked a warning, and the cowboy felt a chill pass through him, hotter than a summer afternoon's sun. Rufus sat down, head tilted, as if trying to decipher the mystery of the locket. "What do you think, buddy? Should we take it or leave it?" The German shepherd's eyes sparkled with mischief, as if he understood every word. Just then, a voice, soft but clear, whispered through the room, "Find me." It was enough to make the hair on the back of the cowboy's neck stand up. "Well, there ain't no turning back now," he replied, a grin creeping onto his face. Their little adventure was taking a turn for the supernatural, and he wouldn't want to miss a minute of it with his loyal companion at his side. With one swift motion, he reached for the locket, and the moment his fingers brushed the cool surface, a flicker of warmth encased his heart. Memories surged in his mind, visions of a young woman, her eyes bright and kind, laughing among the sunflowers. "This must be her!" he exclaimed, his voice tinged with excitement. Rufus barked, as if understanding the profound connection unfolding before them. "I reckon you found a friend from the other side, didn't you?" The cowboy chuckled, feeling the weight of the locket in his palm. As they turned to leave, the rocking chair stilled, almost as if bowing to them, a final farewell from the house that had been alive with history. As they stepped out into the brisk evening air, the sunset painted the world in hues of orange and purple. It felt as if time had stitched together a reunion, and the cowboy's heart swelled with joy. "Rufus, can you believe it? We not only found a treasure, but we made a friend in the process." The German shepherd barked again, tail wagging furiously, reminding the cowboy that the real adventure was the bond they shared. Together, they walked away from the haunted house, locket in hand and spirits high, ready to share their tale with the folks down at the local saloon. Little did they know, this was only the beginning of their haunting escapades, a testament to friendship that transcended realms, filled with laughter and a hint of the mysterious. The sun hung low in the sky, casting long shadows over the old, creaking farmhouse that Cowboy and Paws had stumbled upon. The weathered wood groaned like an old-timer, telling tales of days gone by, while the air buzzed with the hum of cicadas. Paws, his faithful German shepherd, sniffed around, her nose twitching like a little radar, catching scents of mothballs and memories. The cowboy, a rugged figure in his worn-out hat and boots, leaned against the doorframe, scratching his chin. "Well, partner, reckon this place could use a little exploring, but I've got a hankering for a snooze too," he mused aloud, eyes drooping just a tad. "A little cat nap never hurt nobody." As the cowboy eased himself onto a dusty old couch that looked like it had seen better days, Paws plopped down beside him, her warm fur brushing against his leg. The air felt heavy, a kind of stillness that sent quivers down his spine. Outside, the wind howled like a lost soul, but inside, the only noise was the rhythmic ticking of an ancient clock. The cowboy's eyelids fluttered as he surrendered to the embrace of sleep. Just as he drifted off, a faint whisper tickled his ear, sending goosebumps up his arms. "Is that you, Paws?" he murmured, not quite sure if he was dreaming or if the spirits of the house were deciding to pay a visit. Minutes turned into what felt like hours, and the cowboy's peaceful slumber was abruptly interrupted by a crash that rattled the very bones of the house. He shot up, heart racing like a jackrabbit on the run, to find Paws already on her feet, ears perked and ready for action. "What in tarnation was that?" he exclaimed, searching the dim corners of the room with wild eyes. Paws let out a low growl, her instincts kicking in as they ventured toward the noise's origin. A loose floorboard creaked ominously, and the air felt thick with the ghostly presence of yesteryears. The duo exchanged a look, a silent agreement that they wouldn't let a little mystery stand in their way. They soon discovered that the source of the disturbance was an old trunk sitting in the shadowy corner of the room. It looked as though it had been there since the days when folk still rode horses into town to pick up groceries. "Well, I'll be. What do we have here?" the cowboy asked, as he knelt down to examine the chest. Paws sniffed cautiously around the edges, her tail wagging with a mix of curiosity and caution. With a gentle tug, the cowboy opened the trunk to reveal a collection of dusty old relics, faded photographs, a tattered diary, and an assortment of peculiar trinkets that whispered stories of a life long gone. The faint scent of lavender and old leather wafted out, and despite the eerie silence, a warm sense of history enveloped them. As they sifted through the trunk's treasures, laughter bubbled up between the cowboy and Paws. The diary contained snippets of romantic escapades, written with a flair that felt alive again under their watchful eyes. "Seems like these folks had quite the love story," the cowboy chuckled, holding up a faded photo of a couple grinning from ear to ear. Paws let out a soft bark, as if to say she approved, and just like that, the weight of the mysterious house shifted from unsettling to enchanting. Sharing the moment, they reveled in the joy of discovering forgotten dreams, unearthing a past that bridged the gap between worlds. The cowboy couldn't help but think that perhaps, just for today, it was all right to break the rules of adventure and indulge in moments of warmth, laughter, and connection with his four-legged partner. As the sun dipped low on the horizon, casting long shadows over the crumbling porch of the old Thompson homestead, the cowboy leaned against the weathered railing, his trusty German shepherd, Duke, sitting proudly by his side. The air was ripe with the scent of sagebrush and adventure. Behind the dilapidated walls, whispers of the past wrapped around them like a moth to a flickering lantern. Duke's nose twitched. There was something peculiar about this place that had seen better days. The cowboy adjusted his worn hat, feeling the weight of history and the creaking floorboards beneath him. With a chuckle, he remarked, "Well, Duke, looks like we've got ourselves a mystery wrapped in an old burrito." A shiver ran down his spine, but he reminded himself it was just the cool evening air, or so he hoped. Together, they ventured inside, where the fading wallpaper peeled like an old snake shedding its skin. Duke trotted ahead, his ears perked with excitement as the cowboy struggled to keep up while avoiding the occasional spiderweb. "Don't you worry, old pal," he whispered. "If we run into any ghosts, I reckon I'll charm 'em with my wit." The house creaked and sighed, almost in response to his jest. Suddenly, a soft thud echoed from upstairs, freezing the cowboy in his tracks. Duke's hackles raised, and he let out a low growl. "Now that's a sound I don't like," the cowboy muttered, though his curiosity outweighed his fear. With Duke leading the way, they climbed the crooked staircase, each step causing dust motes to dance in the slanting light. At the top of the stairs, a door stood ajar, swinging just enough to reveal a sliver of what lay beyond. The cowboy took a deep breath. "All right, Duke, let's see what kind of ruckus this old place is hiding." Pushing the door open, they were greeted by a room frozen in time, dusty curtains billowing like restless spirits. A faded trunk sat in the corner, beckoning them closer. Duke sniffed around, then looked back with a quizzical expression. "You think it's filled with treasure, buddy?" The cowboy laughed, his heart warming at the sight of his four-legged companion's enthusiasm. As he knelt to open the trunk, the hinges protested with a wail, revealing a collection of forgotten trinkets and old photographs. Each find seemed to whisper stories of love, loss, and the laughter that once filled the very walls they stood in. The cowboy's fingers brushed over an ornate locket, its surface cold but inviting. Duke nudged his hand as if urging him to keep going. "Well, would you look at that?" the cowboy exclaimed, holding up a photograph of a woman with a kind smile, flanked by a dapper gentleman in a cowboy hat. "Seems like we've stumbled upon a love story, Duke, just like us, except without the drool," he added with a smirk. As he pieced together the tales housed in the trunk, he felt a strange warmth enveloping the room, as though the spirits were pleased to have their stories told. They weren't just remnants of the past. They were a bridge connecting the cowboy's heart to the lives that had once thrived within these walls. As twilight descended, casting a magical hue across the room, a soft light flickered in the corner of his eye. Startled yet intrigued, the cowboy turned towards the source, where a shadowy figure began to coalesce. Duke stood protectively in front of him, but the cowboy sensed no malice, only a gentle presence. "You here to share your story, friend?" he asked, his voice steady. The figure nodded, and in that moment the bond between the cowboy, Duke, and the spirit of the house deepened. They weren't just intruders, they were continuers of a narrative that sought to be remembered. With laughter and warmth, the cowboy recounted tales of his own life, weaving together the strands of the past and present, creating a tapestry rich with longing, joy, and connection. And in that enchanted room, surrounded by faded memories, the cowboy, Duke, and the spirit of the Thompson homestead found the magic of resolution, a bridge linking generations with love and laughter, ensuring that no story would ever be forgotten. Well, folks, as the last rays of the sun dipped behind them hills, our daring duo, the cowboy and his trusty sidekick, Duke the German Shepherd, stood before that old witch's house, now just a creaky relic of ghost stories past. Turns out it wasn't spirits haunting the place after all, just a couple of raccoons who fancied themselves the neighborhood watch. With a good laugh and a scratch behind the ears, Duke sniffed out the real treasures, a forgotten garden and some not-so-scary secrets. In that moment, we realized that friendship, like the best pie, is best served warm. The cowboy patted Duke on the head, their bond stronger than a lasso tied tight. They'd ventured through fear and mystery, but it was love and trust that brought him home. As the stars began to twinkle like 1,000 fireflies, the cowboy tipped his hat, knowing this wouldn't be their last escapade. After all, where there's a hound with a nose for adventure, there's bound to be another story waiting to be told. So remember, folks, the best journeys are shared, and there's always another tale just over the next rise. Keep your boots dusty and your hearts light.